the appropriate action will come to you when you are able to look at your feelings as information. What information is this trying to give me? Do I need to rest? Do I need to have a snack? You would be surprised how many of your crazy feelings come from not eating or being dehydrated. So that's a bonus tip. Greetings, hey guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, greetings, hi. If not, thank you guys so much for coming back. On today's agenda is feeling and how to feel. For me, I would define feeling as a spiritual practice. For me, allowing myself to feel is how I do my spiritual maintenance. You know, spiritual maintenance is how we keep the whole machine functioning, in my opinion. And when we don't allow ourselves to feel, we sort of block that whole machine from functioning as it should. And one thing I learned is where we get confused or clogged up or blocked out is when we intellectualize instead of feeling. I do believe we live in a society that really rejects being in our difficult and uncomfortable emotions, but rather promotes constant distraction and busyness from what's truly going on inside. And I think we put so much pressure on our emotions and feelings to be a certain way because we judge them and we're used to having life a certain way, and we've demonized certain emotions and feelings. But feeling is a spiritual practice, and as I said in my other video, we are simply spiritual beings having a human experience. You know what I'm saying? And so when you feel, you allow yourself to expand. And feeling is normal. I don't understand why we've demonized feeling and sensitivity and empathy. It is normal to feel things, and it is normal to feel things through and not dwell in them. And so today I'm going to chat to you guys a little bit more about feeling and how to feel your feelings, because we hear about it, but we're not often given a more practical way to engage with our feelings, and that's what I'm going to chat about today. Okay, so grab a little something nice, you know, remember to like and subscribe, okay? Yes, do it, thank you. As per the usual, I have my notes over here. So I first wanted to chat to you guys about the difference between feeling and intellectualizing. Let me get you guys the definition for intellectualization. Intellectualization involves a person using reason and logic to avoid uncomfortable or anxiety-provoking emotions. But while emotions can be uncomfortable, they are not dangerous. No one ever died from guilt or become depressed because of sadness. In fact, there's pretty good evidence that it is the avoidance of sadness that leads to depression. Anyway, to get over our fear of our own emotions, we need to start being willing to experience them and to build up resilience. So when we suppress certain emotions, we can actually make them worse. Emotions aren't dangerous, they're just information. Emotions are not always fact, but because they're information, it's important to listen to them because they might be telling you something important. You know what I'm saying? Furthermore, if one finds themselves intellectualizing often, it might be chronic avoidance of feeling one's emotions on a day-to-day basis, and that keeps us disconnected from ourselves and disconnected from others. When we don't allow ourselves to feel, we don't allow ourselves to show up for other people as humans because we don't give ourselves that treatment either. Okay, let's talk about feeling. We've taught that when you feel, it's in your brain. You have an emotion, a thought, and it becomes this thing. But feeling doesn't happen in your brain. It doesn't happen up here. It happens in here. Feeling is in the body. This is what I learned. Therapy is amazing, guys. If you can afford it, that's a discussion for another day, the price of getting help. But if you can afford it, you should go. Feeling has nothing to do with like what you think about it or the judgments you make about an emotion. That is completely self-induced. Feeling happens in the body. It's the actual physical sensations that you feel. Alright, so before I get into the actual steps involved in feeling the feeling, you need to understand that there are two parts involved to feeling a feeling. First, that there is the emotion that comes up. What is this emotion? And next, it's what you want to do with this emotion. Are you going to take this emotion and face it, or are you going to ignore it? And that is a choice we make quite consistently. And so I'm going to give you some guiding steps on how to actually feel your emotions. Keep in mind that I said feeling is a physical thing and not necessarily just a thought or mind thing. Alright, so step one to feeling an emotion is to identify your numbing behaviors. What are your go-to numbing behaviors? There are the obvious ones, right? There's drinking, drugs, that's the vibe. But then there are others that are more socially acceptable numbing behaviors, like constantly being busy or playing video games incessantly or completely leaning into being distracted all the time in some form, shape, or manner. There are numbing behaviors. All of these behaviors are not wrong they're just in themselves, in and of themselves. There's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine in the evening after a day of work. But when you're super stressed, do you start drinking a little more? Do you lean on it a little bit more to get you through those times? Those are things that you can learn to recognize within yourself, and that's called self-awareness. And that's why self-awareness is so important. Once you know your numbing behaviors, you are able to identify them when they come up so that you can avoid using them as crutches and just know that you need to lean into the actual work of feeling your feelings, which is that spiritual maintenance that I was talking about. Step two is to identify the feeling. Remember how I said that feeling is in your body? When you are feeling a feeling, it's the physical sensations that you have to identify, and you have to be quite specific with them. Are you having difficulty breathing? Is your chest tight? Are you dizzy? Are your ears ringing? Do you have a lump in your throat? Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you sweating? Is your heart racing? Are your hands shaking? These are all very important parts to feeling the feeling. You are identifying what is going on with you physiologically, which comes from the emotion. You're supposed to sit with this discomfort. Most intense emotions only last for about 90 seconds. Anything after that is the meaning we've placed on the emotion and how it's going to affect us for the rest of the day. Psychologically speaking, okay? That's what I hear down the grapevine. So, you're supposed to sit with these uncomfortable emotions. And when you sit with them, when you recognize that they're there, instead of distracting yourself or running from them or just moving on to the next task or pretending you can deal with it later, you sit with it. You be with the racing heart. You're not supposed to act on this emotion. You're supposed to be with the emotion. And that means being with the physical sensations in your body. That's how you feel the feeling. You're supposed to be with it and then cope with it. And the next important thing would be to label the emotion and be curious about it without judgment. I'll be elaborating more about the judgment in the next step. However, you need to develop a vocabulary for feeling your feelings. I'm going to put a little feeling chart somewhere here, either on the screen or cut to it, that has an array of emotions and their feelings. Once you can identify your feelings, not just angry, you could be more disappointed, disgusted, confused, than just an umbrella term than angry. You need to be able to go into the specifics of what you're actually feeling. Being able to label that emotion makes it lose its power over you. You might be sad, but it's probably more specific than that. You might feel guilty, but it's also probably more specific than that. You might have an array of feelings that are mixing and matching to join in this messy mush. Once you label the feelings, you can detangle the messiness of what you're feeling and actually lean into finding coping mechanisms so that you can move forward. Alright, so step number 3 is not to judge your feelings. Do not judge whatever is coming up. It is usually extremely unhelpful and stops you from being able to fully process the emotion. Let me give you some examples. It is the pandemic, especially in South Africa right now. Anyway, it's your birthday and it's a lockdown time and you are feeling super bummed out because you can't go celebrate with your family and friends at a restaurant. Valid, super valid. You can just feel that. However, you add a secondary emotion to that, which is guilt, because you understand that it's a small problem. All problems are relative, guys. But you understand it's a small problem, but other people have it worse than you. And that is an extremely unhelpful way to view things. Essentially, you're berating yourself for feeling guilty about feeling sad because other people have it worse than you. But multiple things can be true at once here. Other people do have it worse than you in any other context of life, but most things are relative, and it's very unhelpful because you're not helping yourself or anybody else by not feeling your emotion through and moving on through it. If you plan to feel your emotion and go help all those other people that are struggling, then you can do it once you've felt their emotion and you're giving to them from a full cup. But if you weren't helping anybody anyway, and you're feeling these emotions and then feeling secondary emotions on top of those emotions, you're literally just destroying your own mental health. You know what I'm saying? Do not place judgment on the feelings you are feeling. You are valid. It's good to have perspective that can help you cope, but that's also can be a trick of, intellectualizing. Feel the emotion through, cope with it, then put it in its proper place when you are able to. Do not judge it. Something I wrote down here that I forgot to say is that we often create our own suffering in this way by putting judgment on our feelings. It's tough, but try to exercise self-compassion and sit with the feeling without explaining it away. You do not need to pile another emotion on top of your emotion or tell yourself that your emotions say something about you as a person. Your emotions are not a judgment of your character. So, take it home with you. Step number, I don't even know at this point, 4 or 5, is to find a safe space in a constructive way to express the emotion. If it is possible and you do have a safe space, it is really important once you've sat with your uncomfortable emotions to be able to express them. Do you need to call a friend? Do you need to journal about it? Do you need to dance like hell? Do you need to go for a run? Do you need to just move your body, do some yoga? Do you need to go bake? Do you need whatever it is you need to do in a safe and constructive way? And by constructive, I actually just mean not destructive or harmful to other people. Constructive doesn't mean productive, okay? If you are finding that you've sat with the emotion, and now a good way to deal with it and process it and let it go is to find a constructive way to deal with it. What you're trying to do is to find a way to work through the emotion. So you need to sit with it first, identify it, label it, and then work through the emotion. According to psychologists, that trying your hardest to not feel an emotion doesn't provide any relief. It just magnifies it. When you suppress your emotions, you magnify them, you make them bigger. But full relief comes from releasing it. Emotions don't last very long. We just carry them with us based on what we've been taught about the emotion and how to deal with it, you know? All right, so step number 4 or 5, again, is to keep in mind that feelings are information. They're not facts. Feelings are information. They're not facts. Feelings usually illuminate something. They really brighten up an area of your life, that needs you to pay attention to it. You know, some feelings could be showing you that maybe you need to step away from social media a little bit. Things like insecurity, irritability, mood swings, you know, an inability to focus. It might be giving you information to say, hey, hang on, you know, you're lashing out a little bit. What's going on here? What part of the machine haven't you cleaned up? And it might just be that you really need to take a break from social media, or you need to exercise a bit more and you've fallen off of your routine. Yeah, that's me. And you might even notice that you've been super irritable and snappy with people around you, and it might be rather that, well, you know, maybe that's something you need to unpack with your therapist a little bit. You're having all of these feelings. The appropriate action will come to you when you are able to look at your feelings as information. What information is this trying to give me? Do I need to rest? Do I need to have a snack? You would be surprised how many of your crazy feelings come from not eating or being dehydrated. So that's a bonus tip. I think that even though I've given you a whole bunch of tips and they feel like they're a lot of information, the best thing you can take away from that is to identify your physical sensations in terms of feeling, and being able to sit with them and sit in the discomfort, because that's where true freedom is. You know, we live, I hate saying the words a society, but we perpetuate between us a culture of just, you know, putting down our emotions and seeming as insensitive. I'm back, baby. You know, keeping ourselves as insensitive as possible, zero empathy. And the more we do that, the more we stay disconnected. And despite what people may think, suppressing your emotions makes you more illogical, more snappy, more irritable, and not feeling them through. It is the sensitive people. They know something. They have a superpower, and I stand by it. Please comment your 3 favorite emojis if you made it this far. You know, I'm going still by green flip-flop, not a vase anymore. I think green flip-flop and a flower and a green flip-flop. If you make it all the way to the end, comment your 3 favorite emojis, or my 3 favorite currently, because they change weekly, daily, sometimes hourly. And remember to like and subscribe, and thanks. Peace out, Akon. I'm so dumb.